Yeah, get the camera up good. Yeah, get the camera off.
Try and stick it up there.
Right here, maybe. There we go. Quicker than. I like to go to Hollywood.
Yeah, that's good.
Yep. We can turn it when Hannah.
Or you could just hear my voice. I'm okay with them.
This precious thing. Right. Oh, yeah, the whole thing. Keep those options. Yep. Okay, we'll start meeting. 4. Approval of the agenda.
Yep. It's good to be.
We need. Okay, over meeting minutes. Very good job. Once
Super.
again, Lester. That's awesome. So we're compiling a pretty good minute compilation of everything we're doing.
Did you want to start with the introduction?
Yeah,
Sorry.
why don't we start with Anna?
So my name is Hannah Sotak. I'm actually here tonight with both my sons. They both work for me. So this is my son Devin and my son Owen, who had to run out to the vehicle. He'll be back. So they both work for my company, which is Undyne Freshwater Consultants. And my company was established 2 years ago, and the purpose of establishing my business was in particular to help communities, to help organizations, and to help private owners of water bodies to really steward and shepherd what resources they have. I work a lot with private pond owners. I work a lot with folks who have private ponds and need help with restoration of those ponds, need help with the science of those ponds in order to create that restoration. But I also work with organizations such as lake organizations or pond committees. I had a big project over in East Dorset with the Deming Pond Association to help them with preservation and restoration of their water body. And so I have experience in doing permitting and in doing really kind of social dialogue so that we can provide a system for people to exact their goals and to build a scaffolding to help make them a reality with not only their personal property, but within community settings. I have 16 years of experience working in nonprofit work and bringing to that a lot of different project-oriented goals. Prior to that, I served in the military for 8 years. So I've had a lot of different experiences that help me to really be a person who can come alongside a group of people and help you realize your environmental goals for both a water body or a watershed, or in your case, something completely different, really trying to figure out how to work with and manage your gray water system. So I know Matt because we've worked on some projects with some private pond owners. So we've had the privilege of working together and figuring out some interesting problems where I like to say it's an opportunity for a solution and doing that work together. I love what I do. I love private ponds. They're my favorite place to be. I love lakes and rivers. So usually if I have that opportunity, you'll find me in a body of water in my scuba gear, sampling something or looking at something under the microscope. But I'm happy to be here tonight, and I hope that I can help you in whatever way possible to help you get this project moving in a direction that really answers and meets your goals. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. Thanks for coming.
Kathy Sienna Goodwin, one of the select board members for the town.
Yep, thanks for coming.
I'm Meg Gonzalez, and I am here tonight representing the Grafton Outdoor Alliance, and we're gonna be under new business.
Oh, school of planning commission, good.
Buzz Fisher, planning commission. Eric Stevens. Planning Commission.
Matt Ciano, Planning Commission. Chris Wall, Planning Commission.
I'm Suzanne Welch and I'm a very concerned resident and I had some previous involvement with the water project. I live in the village. Where a lot is happening.
Cheryl Hoffman, I'm a resident as well, and also one of the commission members for the Women Regional Commission.
Bob Donald of the Winter Foundation, but I'm here kind of with Meg on the new business portion. Hello, Hannah,
Good to see you, Bob.
one of her clients.
Want to
Yeah.
grab a chair?
He's gonna go sit in the hallway. He's taking notes on his phone for me and then Devin's taking some literal notes, so.
All right, well, we can get right into our water discussion, wastewater discussion. This is probably our what? At least our good for six. And
At least,
then
I mean,
working on,
started a year ago, I think. Approximately, talking about it.
our main goal is to, what are the alternatives that we could be looking at? Kind of staying in step with what Ty and Bond is doing, so. We've come up with some interesting speakers regarding wastewater solutions, alternatives, and working specifically with living biosystems. How it fits for us, we don't know yet, but we're been working on it for more than a year. We started way back when we had our water committee, about 2-3 years ago now.
Yeah, 2018.
Yeah.
2019.
Yeah.
Meg and Matt were on that committee, did great work.
Started with water testing, we continued on. Do the Ty and Bond. Study. Getting them on board and here we are. We're waiting for Ty and Bond. And maybe Kat, maybe you could just give us a quick synopsis of where we're at with Ty and Bond.
We're waiting for the 90% meeting, which should happen, if not December, January. There's still issues around where they want to filter out any gray water. And a problem is there's not many locations that we can look at. There's one that's might be viable, but it's gonna be very expensive to pump up water from the village all the way up to fairly good, a good mile from
It's a mile, probably
mile uphill.
600 feet in elevation,
Yeah.
500 feet.
And how many, and it's an unknown how many people really want to buy into it in the village, because there's a cost.
Sure.
It's a pretty mighty cost, project. So we're waiting on that, kind of wait and see, and then after we get all the information, then it's gonna go to the town vote. And it could happen in March, or during town meeting, I don't know. Doesn't look, honestly, yeah, got it, okay. Right,
Well, Kathy, could you please explain a little bit more about all the select board envisions? I believe there are 96 properties within the district. How is that gonna be decided upon? Are the registered voters within those 96? How is that gonna work?
I think it's up in the air right now, I think right now. They're saying just the residents, not the second homeowners, but please don't quote me on that, but I think they're gonna have to really look at the legalities of that. Because there are second homeowners that want to vote, they wanna say. One of which is having great difficulty because he can't drink his water. The state has said, well, we'll do something with the filtration. But the state is not committing to it. And yet we have a school where the state's involved with their water problem. They did put a filter system in to drink the water for the kiddos. But there's one or two residents around the school that's compromised by the PFAS. No, it's contaminated. And they said the source was the school, so there's a lot of issues, there's probably a lot of legal issues that might pop up.
So that brings up the question of PFOAs, now do we take them out of town and then pump them a mile away into a leach field?
Okay,
Where
so-
they can return to the water.
right,
Yeah.
all right, so if it's okay,
Yeah.
I wanna kind of get this all on one page, because I think what I'm hearing from you folks is that you have a lot of things that have been done to address the situation that has a lot of other issues going on that could affect the outcome. So in my experience, if we get everything in one place, we organize the problem and the tangential problems, then we can begin to synthesize what is here, what you're dealing with, the scope of it, and what action steps you've already taken, what goals you have, and what you're looking for next in terms of movement towards achievement of those goals. So maybe this is an exercise you've already done, I don't know, but one of the things in talking with Matt and going through the last couple of meetings is that even though I have a sense of what's going on, I don't have a clear sense of really the portfolio of problem that you're trying to address. So if it's okay with you, maybe we could take a few minutes and just kind of articulate what that looks like. And then articulate what it looks like of what we've done here, what you've done to try to begin to address that. Does that sound reasonable? I don't want to cut into your meeting too much, but I think this might be helpful. So we're gonna start with problems. So what's the big gold ticket problem? If we were to boil it down in one sentence.
Our existing sewage and water supply. Locations overlap each other
Right.
to the extent that contamination is likely in the future.
All right, and have you been given a time frame for that? Or is it
No.
just a future problem that we know is coming?
We. By state standards for location of sewage and water sources. We can see the overlap not conforming with what is accepted now.
Okay,
And we have ground conditions that would promote fairly rapid contamination if the sources and the contamination are not kept separate. So it's likely to be a issue, and it would be an issue of immense impact, both economically and just psychologically on the village for that to happen. So we're trying to get ahead of that situation.
What always eludes me is that all these ideas are for dealing with gray water, right?
hmm,
And yet the problem of the contamination seems to me would still be there with just the septic, and that's part of the problem. The septics are too close to the various wells, and that's the way the old town is set up. And and I don't know how how dealing with the water has really figures out the rest of the problem.
how dealing with the gray water relieves the problem of
Of
septic, if it does, right?
contamination, right?
And we're talking about a geographic area of how many acres? I've heard numbers of homes, but how many acres is in this particular geographic area? Do we have a sense of that?
An acre.
Have we just said it's the village, or do we say, how are we giving that a name of where the area of issue is?
Thought it was a mile around the village.
Square mile, that much,
No.
not that much, no,
No?
no, we're only looking at probably about, what, 8 to 10 acres maybe, or?
I would think it's a little more than that, but probably less than 100.
Okay.
I mean, for just inside of the village,
Yeah,
I think our village district, for example.
if you're thinking of, going as far as perhaps cheese plant.
Oh, yeah.
Down to, Pickle Street and.
Yeah, okay, that would be,
That block is probably less than 100, but it's certainly more than 10.
I was thinking 10 just in our little 75 home area.
Mhm.
So we know that there are 75 homes directly, right?
Plus or minus, correct. Yeah.
Plus or minus, okay, and these are the homes that their flushing and their sinks and their wells and how they're sourcing and using water are all directly impacted by this concern. But we do know that if these 75 homes are compromised with some future catastrophe, it's not just 75 homes that are affected. It's, how many residents are there in Grafton?
So 600 plus.
Right, so
20.
there's over 600 that will be directly impacted, whether or not they can flush their toilets still and run their water, they're still gonna be impacted by some type of failure or some situation.
But that's not 600 right in the village, we're talking all.
That's all the Grafton.
Right, but all of Grafton would have to respond if something catastrophic were to happen.
Economically, yeah.
Economically, okay, so this is an economic problem?
For both residences and businesses.
Yeah.
Business and resident, that's an important point, because when I drive through the downtown, it's this beautiful little downtown that has these lovely businesses centered here so that when you come to Grafton, you can walk. You can enjoy it. You enjoy the natural beauty of being in this town, but also what the town provides. So if this downtown goes and there's an issue with water, if there's an issue with contamination, everybody who's attached to the economic viability of the downtown, everybody who lives in Grafton, is going to have something at stake at that point.
That's the key point right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this doesn't just affect 75 homes. It affects every home in Grafton.
I think part of what we're saying, Hannah, is not everybody in Grafton might see it that way.
Right,
Ah,
right,
okay,
that's what I'm
so,
gonna add.
so that's maybe another problem, is that there are some people who this is, their toilets and their sinks are not involved. So how does this affect their life?
But we do have a policy that they have to have their septics pumped every 4 years.
And that's
it.
across the whole
That's in the
town?
village.
It's in the village.
Okay,
Okay, just-
so we could say that not everyone
Thinks it's a problem. That's it, like,
That's on the financial side of things.
Yeah.
it as a problem.
we've done it for the past 70 years, you can do it another 70 years, but. Right, so I'm saying.
Yeah, and I can understand how from someone's point of view, that might be a very, very logical way to think about
And then
it.
you have the financial piece. Also with the people that don't live in the village, why do I have to pay it?
Right, why should I have to pay an extra amount of taxes or millage or whatever the decision is made to be? Because I'm barely holding together my own financial portfolio for my property. So if I have to pay $2,000 more a year so that 75 homes can flush their toilets and do this work safely, how am I going to sustain that, right? And that's a common thing that we hear with people in any group, in any choice, in any decision, whether it be a golf outing club, or it be a town, or it be a hunters association. Why should I do it if it's gonna cause stress to me, but the problem itself won't affect me? So what you have is a marketing concern. How do we awaken people to see, not to make something that's not there, but to make the issues personal, not in a negative way, but to say, well, I understand why it doesn't feel like a problem to you, because you're not gonna get anything. You're not gonna get a new flushing system that helps to provide you with something different for your home. But you are making an investment in the insurance of the future of the town and the economic viability that is going to contribute to your wellness as a property owner and your wellness as a member of this place. So the dissonance here is the dissonance here also. Because there's state standards that have to be met, but aren't maybe necessarily getting met already, that are only gonna snowball. And having worked with the state. Every couple of years, they come up with new standards, and it's like, has anybody ever gone and visited the town to see how this is going to affect how we do stuff? Sometimes these state standards come out of left field, but I'll tell you, a lot of the standards are usually generated at a best practices. State and federal level where people say, this is how we deal with small town issues. These are what the scientists are doing here. And they're not going to Grafton, Vermont to see what it means for the town to have to put into practice these decisions. So that's a difficult thing to push back against, especially when you're a small town. I can imagine that it would feel like there's power differentials that you don't really get to negotiate very often.
And they've also just changed some of the standards for drinking water. They're
Yeah.
higher now.
Much higher. And one of the questions that I think comes up in this is that if we're worried about contamination and they're focusing on gray water, we're being told that's the issue. And we know that we're still dealing with maybe an underlying septic concern. What's going to happen with the septic? How is that going to alleviate the concerns with the septic if we deal with gray water? Or is it just pushing that part of the problem down the road? All of that is going to impact what happens to the groundwater that charges the aquifer.
Yeah, but that's really why I don't understand even, I really mean it. I don't understand what Ty and Bond has been studying. If all they've been studying is gray water. That's.
Well, it's just also the septic discharge that would normally go into a leach field.
Right.
Understood, but again, but Eric, you convinced me that the possibility of catastrophic failure of rainwater or flood water or something coming and getting through some crack in somebody's septic is really what we're worried about. Am I misstating?
Conventional systems out there take the septic water discharge from a septic tank, put it into some kind of a dispersal system.
Leach field,
And
right?
that dispersal system is in a
But not the
gravel
solid.
layer that is easily connected water wise with other people's water that they take from their well. So if we allow bacterial content of the septic water that gets into the leach field to propagate out to where the wells are, then we're in big trouble.
Right.
The economics of this is something that planning commission itself hasn't tried to tackle. We've tried to focus on technologies for how the water, wastewater, however it is put out there, is treated. And we also have seen where Ivan doesn't really worry about that much. They're just going at it in a very conventional way. And we're trying to take a look at all possibilities, including those that use living plants as a means of purification to treat the water. And that's after all the system is built to separate out the septic water and pump it up into some kind of a filtration processing plant. It's where it gets dispersed, and prior to dispersal gets treated in some fashion. And we've been trying to bring to the attention of those that are involved in this that living plants probably have a very beneficial function play in purifying that water before it gets dispersed into the ground. The money has not been a focus of the planning commission, but has been of the select board.
Okay, so that's a really important point, because, oh, I'm so sorry. When we talk about the select board and the planning commission, I'm gonna have you repeat that statement in just a second, but to write it down accurately. So the money. You're not gonna obey, are you? So money has been the discussion of the
So
select board. But money has not been the discussion of planning commission. Now, when you say money, we're talking about the economic impact and the cost both, or are we talking about just one of those?
And the political issue of who pays for it. What's
Okay,
in it for me?
so money is who pays and how much it's gonna cost and how that impacts economy. Okay, so who is the one going to make the final decision? The town will vote, okay? But when Ty and Bond come back with a report and they say, here's your report and this is what we're presenting to you, this is what we believe needs to happen, or this is the best viable solution moving forward. We've addressed these concerns, we've gone through all of the state requirements. Here is your proposal. Who is accepting that proposal?
Select board.
Select board. Okay, so the select board, having had this conversation about money, will be the one receiving the report formally. And then it's the select board's job to then transition that information to the planning commission,
No, that's clear.
to the voter.
Yeah,
So it's not necessarily so that these two are going to work together to present this to the voter.
no,
Is there a reason for that?
we're not trying to duplicate their efforts. We're trying to present alternative means of water purification
Got it.
so that the end result may be better. And at one point, Ty and Bond was ready to throw up their hands and say there is no solution in town.
Mm,
And then we started asking questions about drip dispersal. And they said, oh, well, maybe, and then one of the people from the state, a lady whose name I can't pronounce, but I think she's Indian.
okay,
Or some South Pacific origin. She piped up and said, oh, we're working on drip dispersal and that could be funded under this program.
okay.
All of a sudden, people began to think about it, and now that is the primary method by which Ty and Bond is talking about dispersing that water after they treat it.
Okay,
So we've got that our group here at least stimulated a possible solution coming out of things.
that's pretty major.
The next
That's
thing
a huge achievement.
we'd like to see is, can we purify that water further, particularly in view of the contamination from PFAS compounds, so that when we put it back in the ground, we're not just taking PFAS from the residences, processing it and putting it back out on the groundwater.
Right, you're moving the PFAS somewhere else to have another issue. Okay, so. Ty and Bond, and I know their name is spelled with an E and some other letters in it. I had to ask Matt what the spelling was today.
EIGHT or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll simplify it because, so Ty and Bond now sees. And I never won an award for handwriting, so my apologies. Sees the drip system. As the only way forward.
Were they also gonna be, because they couldn't find really a spot ideal, were they gonna be looking at water? But then they said, you can't do that in 2 years because you have to have your filtration system working. So it's clean before you put in a water system. Is that true or not?
I don't know,
I hear 2 years.
the last big meeting we had
Yeah,
at
the
the school.
50%.
They said they're now going to look at water sourcing as part of the solution, and between that meeting and the last meeting we had. Something happened, I think it's at the select board level,
Yeah.
it didn't get to us.
What happened? It was all of a sudden, it said that.
They wanted to do the water because it's gonna take 2 years before you can even do a water system. You had to have a filter system.
I thought that was being driven by the new Vermont regulations. That how do they have a choice?
Oh, you're right. There was something.
If
like
it's
that.
driven by the regulations, they can't just decide not to do it. I would think.
I know it came up, right?
Well, over at that.
That's
meeting
why
at
it
the
came up in the
school,
meeting, they said it's regulation.
At the meeting at the school, when we were talking about PFAS, Diane Bond was. Sort of jumping up and down saying, but the state doesn't have any. Limit, there's no standards out there for PFAS right now. So they were basically saying they were gonna ignore the situation, but we're not.
Okay,
Eric, may I just ask a clarifying question? So Eric, when you say the drip system.
Yeah.
Is that the one that is in that current proposal that is piped and then dripped onto the property?
Well, drip is perhaps not a very good description of it. They pump water up, they run it through water manifolds below frost line, and then when they want to disperse it, they pump more pressure into it to drive it up into pipes that have little holes,
Oh, okay,
and that is about a foot below the surface of the ground.
okay.
So it waters the field, and then they
Water.
remove the pressure and it goes back down, pipes into the
Mhm.
frost protected area. So the drip is really under the ground, but it's shallow.
And that's the current proposal that costs an estimated $8 million.
I don't know. I haven't done.
I think that's,
I haven't
that's,
paid attention to the pump.
that's the proposed, the one that we heard about at the 60% meeting. So the drip system. It's wonderful that this body came up with an alternative. The alternative happens to cost twice as much as the money we have coming to us from the ARPA funding.
Right.
It's $8 million proposed. And the ARPA money is obviously $4.
okay.
So this is a real concern when you get to the point that you wrote down on your other sheet about who's paying.
Right, and you have as compared to even, towns around you, you have a much smaller population who's accepting the burden for that. Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we know that the sewage and water issues has been driving all of this movement. We know that there have been different committees working on different things.
You think?
And part of the issue, part of the problem is that not everybody sees this as a problem. It's one of these, if it doesn't affect me, or if I don't see how it affects me, it's hard for me to get behind and support it. We also have Time Bond, who is taking the information that this committee said, wait a second, you can't just walk away and say there's nothing we can do. What about this? And they said, oh, well, maybe there is a solution here. And so they've now gone in that direction. They said, oh, there is a solution. But they're the ones giving an estimate that it's going to cost about $8 million, which is twice as much as what you have budget for.
It also includes your maintenance of this plan too, each year, there's a maintenance cost.
So there's an above the 8 million. So, Right.
That figure also puts us out of the, where there's a percentage of number of people
Yeah.
per.
It goes against the median income over 2%.
It's where.
It was way over, so it doesn't even fit.
so it's beyond something that, it's not that you're trying to sell this to the town, it's not something you can sell to the town necessarily, but you may have to. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, maybe Kathy could help us understand what the current thinking of the select board is on who is going to vote. Is the entire town gonna vote on this, or is it, yeah,
It's still up in the air.
Pardon?
I think right now they're going with just the residents, not the second homeowners.
Well, you know,
Until they get more clearage, I don't,
last I saw, there were 84 properties in the district. 19 of them are owned by the Winter Foundation, which is a entity, does not have a vote. Concerns me.
and you're one of the biggest users for the system.
usually when we have a town meeting, it's all registered voters in
Yeah.
Grafton.
Yeah.
Is the select board thinking that for this particular town meeting would be the registered voters in the 92 homes? Or would it be a town meeting with all registered voters in the town?
Now, last,
Or maybe that's still
I
under
think-
debate, I'm
I
just,
know they've had it before where, like, I'm thinking of the Lynn, they didn't have a vote then, but they had a voice. Not a vote, so
Yeah.
it might be a voice rather than a vote, I don't know. That's
okay,
not determined yet.
yeah, I'm not, okay.
this is a huge issue, obviously, that we're not gonna resolve. right
Yeah,
now. Let me ask the planning commission, and before this meeting, last time I went to a planning commission meeting, there was big talk about this biological system. One example being at the Sharon Rest Stop, and I happened to be there that week by total coincidence.
we put it in.
Is it on the table here? That's not that drip, the drip
No,
system.
no, this,
Is that even under discussion?
with us,
That's it.
as far as I know, it's not by time bond, and it's not with the select board. We have only one select board member here tonight. That concerns.
When I
But
said
we're
we put it
making
in, Matt, MJS put it in part of that system, the plants, cause I
Oh.
planted something.
So that system in particular, the idea for that system is to host the drip system. And to utilize the plants and that particular technology to ensure that the cleanest product is returning to the groundwater and to the aquifer. Because frankly, and I am not a structural engineer, I am not somebody who does engineering for any of the type of environmental projects that we're talking about. I usually am the person who ends up saying, wow, nobody thought about this, and now you have this problem, and we have to resolve this problem in the aftermath. So I think part of what we're trying to do is see those problems ahead of time, and both Matt and I are in our lines of work know all the time that people make construction decisions and make decisions to put systems in and do things, and then go, well, yeah, but why is my water milky white all the time? Well, let me tell you, because when you decided that you wanted the gravel that looked pretty instead of looking at the stone that was
Yep.
here, you put 10 times as much calcium into your water column that you can't get out unless you remove 10 tons of gravel. Right, so these are things that involving people who have resolved those problems. It's great that you're asking these questions. Part of the concern, however, is that the $8 million is a huge, scary number for a system that you have to have. It's not a luxury item. Right? You're not looking to do this because it would be fun and you need a way to spend money. This is something you have to do to ensure the future of your town. Am I understanding that correctly?
Another impact on this money piece is that the town is putting in a new bridge, which is gonna be $8 to $10 million. They start that, they say this coming April. So that's another factor in how the town is gonna pay for all this.
Going back to the meeting that was at the school. Remember from the state, it's Emily Hackett. Was on Zoom. And if I'm not mistaken, she said something about that the increase or the changes in the scope of this project could be covered beyond what the original grant talked about. And again, I pay no attention to money, but I think there may be something worth looking at there before we get really scared about the 8 million. I'm interested more about if we pump this gray water up there, filter it, and then put it through a biological system. Can we remove PFAS, drugs and other things before it goes into the ground? And I know the select board isn't paying attention to that, and Ty and Bond is. But I still see that as a part of our mission here in the planning commission to push to see what technology is out there to purify water.
Well, and I think too, when it's involved, when children are involved in school, everybody's like, oh my God, there's PFAS in the water, we can't have our children drinking that. But when it's something that could be in the general environment that you don't see and you don't really know, it tends to not affect people as much, or they don't think about it as much, unless they're conscious of that issue already. So there's an education piece here that sounds like it needs to happen with the town before you vote, because an informed voter is somebody who has all of the pieces in front of them, not just here's the money question. So there's an education piece here that's really important that helps to say, this is why we believe these steps are necessary. And as a town, we want to inform our citizens so that we can have an informed voting populace. That includes getting people in the same room who are on different committees.
The select board does have a committee. Joe Polio and Seth Paycheck are on that committee, and they meet with Ty and Bond, if not once a month for these meetings. I sat in on some of them, well, by Zoom. And it's interesting to get 20 people on the screen. They're all from different departments, from Ty and Bond. Well, have you done this yet? Have you done this yet? And I sit there and I go, do they know what they're doing? It's just a lot of some of it's miscommunication, or no, we're waiting on GMP to put polls up before we do this, and it's crazy.
There's a little bit of a cacophony
Yeah,
going on.
Yeah, and then people leaving from Ty and Bond or from the engineers that they asked to do some of the work. So Joe and Seth are pretty much going to all these meetings and reporting back to us.
Okay.
And many times when they report back, they don't have much to tell us.
So I know I want to respect your time, and I know you have other issues to bring to the floor. But I think what you've accomplished is you've been able to articulate the kind of broad scale of the struggle, the things that are ahead of you to answer the very basic question or the very basic problem of gray water sewage and gray water in the village. So I think your next steps are going to have to be beginning to tie these pieces together and figuring out ways to start building a footpath towards the next decisions and choices, because a vote will come, whether ready or not, here it comes. And I think it's really important to be prepared, and you have to, I think we could figure out together what that means and what that looks like, and how this committee can interface with your committee and other committees and the public, and find out ways that this can be built together. You know, can we put a web page on the town that gives basic information that has a question answered? Can we add that to that? Could we send out educational things to the school? So the school, we're talking about groundwater and PFAS in the school. It's a wonderful place that is already talking about these issues. How can we educate people through that education system? Right? There's different things that can be brainstormed to try to help to bring that information, and then begin to make a list of questions. Who is responsible for this? Who is going to interpret this report? Who is going to make sure that this is done? And bringing that information into a cohesive, walkable plan. So that's something that, you know, you folks need to decide if you want to bring one more voice to the table. It doesn't hurt my feelings if you say no, thank you. We don't need your assistance with that. But this is something that I'm versed in doing and I'm experienced with, and I love to help solve problems that really are for people who are trying to make their community the best place it can be. So if that's something you want, we can have further discussions, but I don't want to take up all of your time. I think this is really helpful for me to get to know exactly the kind of sticky wickets that you're trying to address.
I can see on this education piece that the planning commission, with all the work that you've done, you know, with other resources to filter this wastewater. It's part of that education, to let everybody know and have the questions.
Yeah.
That's a big piece, and I think you should be part of it.
Well, along with the options that we've come up with, they're gonna wanna know, okay, how do you do it?
Yeah,
Okay, how do you do it? Where's it gonna be?
how do you walk the walk?
Right. And I'll go back to the biosystem, living plants, being a way to filter that water, like Eric said. To have a smaller footprint to where we leach it. So rather than having 4 acres, maybe we can leach it into an acre and say, here's clean water going into the ground. And some of those plants can absorb the drugs, the PFOAs. And there's been some research on that some PFOAs are being removed by plant material.
Right,
And was it carbon? No. There's another component to this that was taking up PFOAs.
it might have been active carbon, I have.
Was it activated charcoal, maybe?
I think that's what they're using in people's residences
Yeah,
to do the filtering.
and they're using a coconut-based active carbon that has a greater adsorption than anything coal-based. It's coal-based,
Biochar,
biochar.
biochar does it, yeah.
Well, thank you for letting me talk and kind of be a part of your meeting, and, you know, whatever I can do to help, I'm happy to do that. So, would you like me to not be a part of the next parts, or do you care if I sit here?
You're
What's-
welcome to stay,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right.
We may have more questions.
Okay,
Do you have any scientific data on removal of PFOAs or PFAs or that 1,000 chemical, forever chemical?
not with me, but I can provide that information.
Because that's what one of the things we're trying to achieve. And
Was it Rob that was on the Zoom? That had a little bit of it, we talked about it, and Rob had kind of mentioned, either Rob or Dave mentioned
I
it.
think it was Rob, and I can rattle his brain. So Rob has an extensive background working with plants for achieving goals of chemical sequestration and things like that. So he used to do that with the state, and he's done that in his own professional life, and he actively grows plants for those purposes. So I can look into that, and I can provide resources, research and data for you. And, you know, give you kind of a bank of information.
Because the filtration system we did up north. Didn't we have the tropical plants for Hawaii or,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
yeah,
And I'm so glad that Bob, you were able to go to Sharon Rescott. It is one of my favorite places. I kid you not, when I have the opportunity to stop there and stop. I think about things and I'm able, it's very much a lovely place. It is, and it's set up so nicely so you can go in and just be there. So,
the other thing that we talked about in our last meeting was, or maybe 2 meetings ago, that system was originally designed for. I forget the gallon, 6,000 gallons, and right now it's treating over 20,000. Efficiently with the same footprint that it's in, the plants have matured, the root systems are in that solution, and they're just eating it right up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a wonderful vision to think about that plant-based system in the village. And how that would not only clean our water, but also provide that benefit for people to go and see it and be part of it. But I'm just wondering if the question, when you talk about smaller footprint, Matt, is there an alternative that the entire system can require a smaller footprint than pumping it all the way up to a field and then putting our plant-based system way out in a field
No,
someplace?
I'm envisioning it going through the plant-based system first. And the water coming out of that goes to a drip system.
But then the drip system would still have to be pumped up that many miles. No,
We
no,
could probably put it in your backyard.
okay,
It's
because,
green, but pick a
Okay,
smaller.
all right, I
A
think
smaller
that-
area.
yeah, so that's one of.
But it
the
still has to meet the
technologies.
criteria for the state that it leaches,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it
okay.
passes the 2-year
Hmm.
filtration test and. Or,
Okay, so one of the
Russell Brecker's
technology.
gonna multiply his business.
One of the technology alternatives might be the smaller footprint based, plant-based system
Yeah.
that we could,
Mm.
yeah.
They're not cheap, these systems. But if we're gonna spend $8 million, let's spend about $8 million that will be like. Hey, look at this.
Well, and I think of your outdoor programs in the winter time, there are people in Sharon who go to the rest stop to go to this place. And they have meetings there, they sit and talk. I have friends who go there just to get out of the winter, because it's this warm place. I have a pastor friend who goes there and that's her sanctuary, so whenever she's dealing with something difficult, she goes there, pulls up a chair and she's there the whole day.
Yeah.
So it's not just a space to deal with Hui water, it's a place that you can actually turn into an attraction that brings some beauty and some functionality and a sense of gathering even. So the nice thing about a living system is it's worried about the life here in the town, the culture. It's not just about taking care of your dirty water.
Does that then go to a drip system there?
It goes before it. So instead of,
I mean, after it's going through all the plants, then it's going to
Yeah.
a drip.
Yes.
Then the drip system is in the median between northbound and southbound. It's pumped north. Across the highway, and I forget the area, but it's just, it leaches right in the median of the highway. Perfect situation.
so the hope would be to shrink the drip system. And therefore shrink the cost of the drip system. And maybe supplement that with the living system, which may cost about the same amount, but at least you have something that is multifaceted and has a community purpose.
Mhm.
And has something that brings a beautiful reclamation of PFAS and all these, things that are in the water. We can say, we're turning what is difficult and bad for our environment into something of beauty here in Grafton.
So who would decide where, if it changed into some, that kind of structure, who would decide where are possibilities for the plant-based piece? And then where would the drip part be, and maybe if it's smaller, it could be somewhere else, but who makes, is that Tiger Bond or that?
Oh, we're gonna have to find, it's like when we had 15 sites for the leach field, and only, three? No, three, 3 or 4 landowners said, yes, I'll have a test, but the others said they wouldn't even have a test. They didn't want to think about it, so we're gonna find that piece of parcel. I'm envisioning a tennis court.
The tennis seems to be floating on water these days. I don't know what's
It
going
was
on.
controversy, the noise of the paddleboard.
Oh, pickleball, it is noisy.
Can't win.
It's a paddle that says pickle every time you hit it.
Pickleball. Yeah, one of them.
One of them got converted to.
You don't wanna get hit with one. It's a hard wiffle ball,
Yeah,
yeah.
leaves marks.
But there's one tennis court available, so maybe.
Could we put a greenhouse on it?
What about the Grafton Pond? No,
Oh, I know.
I'm thinking of
Yeah.
the
Well,
possibility.
We're looking at Bob, but you're a business in town, own 19 properties.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't have a
the
say.
end would
I have
be
the same thing in
access
Bellas
to
Falls,
vehicles.
I have my property in an industrial park. I don't have a vote in the town of Rockingham. Town of Rockingham could say, oh, we wanna do this to the industrial park, and I don't have a say in it. So it's unfortunate. This is a different situation because you are part of the problem, if you will. Making homes in the end, so you should have a say. If you're part of the problem, you should have a say in it.
Should be part of the solution, and that sounds like what the Wyndham Foundation is trying to be, if they can have that vote.
The Wyndham Foundation has been great to this town.
What's that, Kathy? I didn't hear you.
No, the Wyndham Foundation, the history of it, when they first started, have been. They've been well endowed, but they also have helped the town of Grafton. And. They need to have that, they're vital to this.
We don't have any legal beagles amongst us, but
No, we don't
There's
have
such-
such.
there's such a thing as a water district. The
The fire
formation of which may not be the same as regular town government, so I think someone needs to, you know, with that kind of background, like Seth,
Right,
needs to look into what are the implications of a water district? Who gets to vote,
right,
if you will, and the formation.
right. Yeah. Who was the engineer for the Sharon? Are you in contact with that person? Is
That was, well, DEW was the contractor, I'm not, was it VHB maybe? VHB.
I wonder if that's a source of information that could help with this education piece on how they did it and. Or
I
just,
think, well, Dave was our best bet.
Yeah, I think
Um,
Dave definitely is a contact who has so much knowledge in that.
Cause I think he worked on that as well, because he remembers us
um,
when we planted that.
Well, that sounds like a next step item. That question is a very important question, and that should drive. Finding engineers love to hear from engineers, just like freshwater scientists like to hear from freshwater scientists, because you all speak an inside language, right? So having an engineer who's done this, speak to an engineer and engineer speak can be a very helpful process. So sounds like a very important next step. Is to find out an engineer who has experience building these, who could have a conversation with Ty and Bond.
I think they can pick it back. Whoever, to what Time Bond has done already. You know,
Oh, yeah, it's not wasted information
No,
or
no.
time at all.
Definitely.
Getting back to the vote. The select board needs to start working on that. Who can vote? And not wait till a month before the March meeting. Work on it now. And really start, not push it, but educate why. All those involved, you need to have a vote.
You really think it'll be ready for the March meeting? Nothing that I've read about it.
I don't think so, but
Well,
I think that's. They want for it to a vote, so. Definitely for them.
would you have a special vote for it at some point in time, or would it have to be during
Could be a special town meeting.
the wind wasn't it?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, special.
Wasn't there is there a timeline we're working against for the 4 million? We have to meet a certain time.
I don't know.
Rings a bell. I don't remember, but it rings a bell.
Even the new grant. Is that, it's set in stone now, I know they were still looking for information on the RFQ. For time
Gordon's
bond,
working on something.
remember the RFQ we had to do, time bond? For some reason, the state doesn't have that information. They certainly do, because Mark admitted all that, and it's on the state, but it was on the state website at that time.
Have you been in touch with Steph around that stuff?
Yeah, we've been in the email links on that. But Mark Johnson. He's been great, he wants to get back involved, he wants to know more about what we're doing. And John, his assistant, it's in my folder listed in the front row. Anyone remember John's name? He spoke about this whole thing, about educating the community, remember he said, get people involved. You remember that?
Yeah, no, absolutely, but you're right, I forgot, that was just recently, like a half a year ago, yeah.
was
He
this
said-
spring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he said that you gotta have somebody really just working the town constantly.
And an insider outsider is always good. You don't want somebody who lives in town to be your apologist, because they're gonna take all sorts of heat and flack. That makes it really intolerable to continue being a resident of the
Right.
town.
Hmm.
But you want somebody who has a connection, who doesn't feel like, you wouldn't want somebody from Massachusetts who doesn't know anything about Vermont or anything about the town to be your apologist, because then it feels like an outsider telling you what to do.
And wasn't that the fellow from Wyndham Regional? What's his-
Chris Campany.
Yeah,
Fits that bill.
Yeah, they did a
Yeah.
great job.
and he was,
Yeah.
I thought that he was tasked to do that by the select board or not, that wasn't.
I think it was a select board, yeah.
Yeah, he showed up,
He found out through us though.
yeah, that's right, because,
We
Yeah.
invited him in.
We invited this.
yeah,
This happens to be a pet issue of his anyway. But if we really want him to be a strong contributor in this, we need to pony up some money to the Wyndham Regional Commission to pay for his time.
but wait, but didn't he show, he was at the 60%, he was at one of the meetings.
Yeah, he was at the.
And I thought that was, he was
He
already,
was a great MC.
no, he was, but that was his only, it was a one-time appearance, it's not like he had a gig. I thought that.
He
some-
did too.
He's been in other
did
meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was
meeting
another
before.
gentleman, too, another young, younger guy. who went
yeah.
additional
Right.
that came
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was, I thought I'd be working on.
Part of his staff was at the other meetings. One of his problems is that he has an executive board meeting on the second Tuesday of the month. So if we want to have him come to our meetings, we have to choose a different date.
We may have to do another Wednesday. Get the GIA out of upstairs. Then come downstairs.
Chris would be a good one to serve as a on-spot MC to present the entire picture.
So if we, I think, Hannah, you're available to do something like this for us?
I am available to do something like that for you, or to work with people who are doing it, to bring about some cohesion and organization to kind of. To really lead that charge. It sounds like you folks have been doing lots of different pieces. If you have somebody whose face is already present in the community, who people respect and know. That might be the best choice for you, as long as you can guarantee that person's going to be available. I'm happy to collaborate. For me, there's a flexibility there. But we can talk about what that means for you folks. And what your expectations are, what you're really putting a job description together for somebody who you want to be able to kind of cohesively put these things together and walk forward. So that is work I do, but I don't like duplicating work, especially if they're good people who are already doing good work.
So Chris being with Wyndham Regional, a state employee, would.
No, he's not a state.
He's not state employee?
But Wyndham Regional Commission is a kind of a hybrid organization. They're funded by the state, but they have to bring in all of their own revenue beyond the meager amount that the state provides them. They're subject to the whims of the community development or whatever it is, new agency that was set up in state government a few years ago. So you could call them a quasi-government, state run government organization, but they're not state employees at all.
So he could be on our side, know what's going on with the state, but not have a state bias.
I would say that's probably true. The commission is set up to service the member towns. Which is basically it's basically Wyndham County. Also two other straight Bennington County, Windsor County towns. But beyond the normal outreach that they give to all the towns in the district. A particular project has to be funded from something, be it a grant or town kicking in money. You basically set up a contract with them to do something. So select board would have to provide a little bit at least to defray his and staff expenses to help us.
Now, here in November, wasn't there a grant that we missed time period again for November grants that we could
This
do,
could conceivably come under the municipal planning grant.
which is $5,000.
Well, we could get more than that on it. But 5,000 would have been a reasonable figure to have asked for, yeah.
So where do we go with this? Do we present it to the select board? Do we get it on the agenda?
Get on the agenda, and also you're looking at your budget for planning commission. Only $1,000 in there right now, but we're supposed to be meeting again, I think, November 30th. Tie up some of the budgets.
All right, let's move it on here.
Matt, I'm just wondering if there might be an opportunity to take an interim step, because I'm just speaking as a voter in the village. For me to accept that the only choice in front of me to resolve my overlapping leach field costs $8 million and requires pumping over a mile of 500 feet is counterintuitive to me. We're a small community. We have a very contained problem in almost 70 households total. If the $8 million solution is the only solution, then I'm willing to logically accept that. But I don't think we've heard an alternative solution. Is there an alternative solution with a smaller footprint, a more distributed process for managing this gray water or septic, whatever, that we could be offered to consider as an alternative? I think Hannah mentioned an engineer that might be able to talk to Ty and Bond and somehow persuade them. They seem not open there to consider an alternative technology and
Well, there's more than just convincing the engineer, it's convincing the state and the state funding. And
But you said there were some people in the state of Vermont that are using the system. Where do they get their money? Did they get it through the state? Did they get it through the feds?
well,
Right, this system is the alternative,
Yeah.
because what they came back with initially is, there's nothing we can do to help you. So this is the alternative that was brought from this committee to Ty and Bond.
so we need to find someone who can design it. You know, come up with a concept, design it, engineer it, and then say this is your option. And then,
It's financeable by the state.
right. So that's the alternative. The other alternative is smaller independent systems that connect to each other.
Right.
But there's a legal issue with that. By far, I know with the water, having
Okay.
one well feeding several houses, there's a lot involved with that.
Somebody mentioned different septic systems that people could use.
Yeah, well, the one that June put in for MKT, that could feed probably 3 more houses, for example. Put a couple more of those in, you've got some solutions.
And when you just said this is the alternative, you meant the $8 million solution, this $8 million that's in the 60% plan? Or did you mean the smaller footprint with the plants?
I mean, smaller footprint with plants.
So we
If
just
if that
need,
can't fly, if that won't, if we can't find anyone to design it or say, no, this isn't gonna happen.
Or meet state standards
Meet
with
state
it.
standards, then what about several systems in the village?
yeah,
It's gotta go on someone's property that's gonna have several houses feeding it, but that's,
so
I
is
think,
one of the questions, can we find someone to evaluate whether such a system would work? Provide such a system, a plant-based system on a smaller platform is the one I'm talking about. Is there a way we can find out if someone could at least come here and tell us if we're eligible for such a solution? And if so, a ballpark of what it would cost? Because if it costs 20 million, then. Right.
but that's kind of where we're getting at. These informational meetings that we've been doing and just discussions and gathering information and names of people, Hannah, Rob, Dave. And even Mark from RCAP. I think it's time to get Mark involved again with us, because
Yeah,
he knows some of the state
So
regs
put it in
and
a
fine.
package. Put all this information in a package.
yeah.
And then to educate
Gosh, excuse me.
the town
Yeah,
and to educate us, the select board and the committee.
but we need the authority to say, yep, keep going with this,
Well, we're gonna,
you know.
So when you had last time with how many more meetings ago was, but Hannah was on Zoom with other people, a guy from Hawaii and blah, blah, blah. And I remember being very intrigued by it, but as Suzanne says. So what? I mean, don't seem to get any attention from Diane Bond or anyone else. How can we get this information? And it's easier to ask the question and answer it. I don't know who's gonna do this. Or who's gonna pay for it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but unless it's done, this is a great idea that's going nowhere.
Yeah, I agree with.
Well,
that.
it's been tough getting information.
So an alternative is to say. That you mobilize somebody whose sole purpose is to go get the information, contact, because there are other companies in the US and in the world who do living systems. To bloodhound it out and sleuth it out to find who can do this and offer those things, to put somebody in, and frankly, I think Matt has been doing a lot of that work, finding people and having contacts with people. But having somebody who's a dedicated researcher to this problem, to go out and kind of find that information and to bring a cohesive package. So to answer that, I know that, I provided documents to some of the companies doing this, but did not go beyond providing documents. If somebody wanted me to call them and to interview them and spend time with them, and right, that's an alternative for you to put someone, or if one of you wants to take that information and take up that sleuthing, I think that's a reasonable pursuit, because you're not just trying to save money, you're trying to do the right thing and make a forever solution, not a temporary solution, something that's gonna outlive all of us and outlive our children, hopefully, right? So how do you figure that out? You have to have a dedicated person who is gonna make it their mission to do that. I don't know who in your town has that capability or has that, do you have a local person who is, a lot of people are grant writers. Grant writers have great abilities to go and sleuth out information. You already have a paid person in town who does that research. Or is that somebody you need to hire to go and completely do an overhaul? I think that's a question.
I wouldn't want the situation to be viewed as the living systems as being a replacement for an alternative to what Ty and Bond has done. It should be looked at, I believe, as an enhancement to the process that they have proposed so far. It's a way of treating the water after it comes through their regular digestion systems and purifies it probably almost to a drinking water quality before it gets dispersed in the drip system. So, and I also don't think that trying to make many systems on every residence in town is a very viable solution. And as far as what was done at the MKT, if you knew what was under the lawn out and back, you wouldn't want that in your residence either, because if you went out and back of MKT, I'm even exaggerating a little bit, and tried to stick a shovel on the ground, you'd hit the top of a concrete tank. Just any place you put it, that's a tank field out there, that's very expensive. You wouldn't want to try to replicate that technology in every residence. So having a central system that does the job well and does not allow the contamination from individual septic systems to propagate out into the aquifer in the village is a much better solution than trying to treat it on site, in my opinion.
That's a very
It goes back to-
good point, Eric.
It goes back
Very
to
well
Lester,
said.
you asked the question of septic tanks holding the solids, that stays in place. As long as it's in good condition,
Right, well, so, yeah, I mean,
right, you're containing it along the way.
so yes, I mean, the well contamination has been the driving force for trying to find a solution. And so the question is, is it the leach fields which are the biggest, are part of the problem?
Yeah.
Or is it
That is
potentially cracked? It's not the septic,
No.
so it's really just the leach field, I think, sorry.
It's because because the water has to go somewhere.
Right.
Solids stay in the
Yeah,
tank.
the
gets
salts
pumped
and,
out.
and even with whatever, they're okay, they're contained enough, they don't cause a real problem.
It's the kidneys that are the problem.
Okay, thank you, I was just trying to get a handle.
The stomach, it's the kidney.
Right.
There you go, good way to put it, there you go. Okay, thank you.
And you hope that water leaches through the soils and gets to the aquifer clean.
Right, and it has to, and it has a 2-year, it has to be able to stay away from the aquifer for 2 years.
So that's the education that everyone needs to know.
Yeah.
Well, most people don't know how their septic system works.
No, and having had to deal with my septic system this summer and having half of my leach field float away with storms. It's a real difficult thing to negotiate when all of a sudden you can't wash your clothes, you can't bathe yourself, you can't get clean water. And it goes from 0 to 60 pretty fast. I mean, 24 hours of that, maybe it's a little fun, you're camping. 48 hours, you're like, we're moving to a hotel and I hate everybody, right? Like it's, if something were to happen, if we were to have a large storm, because I have a feeling that most of these homes are in the corridor already, where there tends to be a lot of groundwater surge, there tends to be a lot of issues with storm damage or could be storm damage or flooding, right? So if something were to occur, you all of a sudden have lots of people, right? Like, so there's layers of potential harm that you don't want to be fear mongering, but you want to be realistic when you unpack these things with people.
I would say that there's not much of immediate storm damage, risk.
Good.
However, this is an old floodplain that the village is built on, and it's got gravels. And the gravels allow water to travel fairly rapidly, and the groundwater level is high.
Do you know what the hydrological soil group is? Is it a C or a D? Okay.
That was a question that was asked Fine Bond. I can't remember. I think it's in there. Probably in the next report.
Okay. Because we can also pull the state data on that. You can do that for free. So.
Any other questions for this discussion? We can move on. I'm gonna, if it's okay with the planning commission, wanna move to public comment so we can get Megan. At least there.
Was it under new business? Is that under new business?
Any other under
Okay.
public comment. Technically didn't make the agenda.
It's gonna write in somewhere, just in the goodness of its heart.
Go ahead, Meg.
Okay. This is gonna be like really positive stuff, because we're not asking you for anything. This is just if you wanna take a piece and pass it around. So, let me introduce myself, because I don't know several of you around the table, but, so I am Meg Gonzalez. I'm mostly known as the cheesemaker's widow. I'm married to Mariana, who's the head cheesemaker at the Grafton Village Cheese Company. The reason why I am here is because I was working as the director of a small nonprofit locally, and then I left that in June, and fortunately the Wyndham Foundation grabbed me to fill a vacancy as their grant administrator for their philanthropic giving. So but I also had some interest in trying to look to see some sort of cross-promotional kinds of activities, specifically here in Grafton, and I ended up sitting in on some meetings for the Grafton Outdoor Alliance, which basically includes the Nature Museum, the Grafton Trails, the Grafton Outdoor Association, and the town. Being represented by Margot Matt, the Village Park, and than other representative of some of the businesses in and basically. This group is relatively new and they've come together because they really have a passion for seeing how we can grow the opportunities for outdoor recreation in and around Grafton moving forward. So everybody's sort of been doing their own things and they really want to come together and see how the opportunities for growth that are going to benefit the residents, that are going to benefit the town, and are going to benefit the region. So I had only been at a couple of their meetings and listened to their discussions, and then I heard about this grant opportunity from the state, which is basically the state's interest in helping these towns that are really sort of not locked in, but really dependent on outdoor recreation as a big part of their economy, and how we can work to, you know, make Vermont that much better. And so we started looking at this grant, and basically there are 4 tracks. There's an implementation track that you have to be shovel ready. You have to have your permits and everything ready to go. There is a project development track. There is a diversity track, and then they added a new one over the summer, which is flood recovery track. So this group is basically at a planning stage and really trying to look at what is needed with what already exists to really sort of enhance the experience for people coming here to Grafton, enhance the experience for the people already living here in Grafton, and how I see it as how can Grafton really sort of get its ducks in a row so it's that much more of a player in the bigger picture. Mostly regionally, like in the, you know, the county, but also, again, the state is obviously very interested in trying to help these smaller communities, particularly really just sort of get those pieces in place that really can enhance the experience. So the Wyndham Foundation has agreed to be the lead applicant because they require a group that's really well positioned to be able to manage the grant, and it's on a reimbursement basis. So the planning track is basically that, where it would reimburse this group for the investment in staff time. It would allow for hiring a consultant, bring somebody in that's an outdoor specialist, somebody in that's architecture or engineering. The group has talked about everything from needing some kind of a visitor center or multiple visitor hubs where people can get information. They've talked about the need to connect the trails that already exist, adding new things, you know, like the Turner Homestead, maybe looking at other things. I think what's so really fascinating about Grafton, the more that I've learned about it, is how much historical and cultural pieces are just embedded in the outdoor recreation space already. So I think that that's something. There's also a real interest in making sure that we are attracting a diverse population. You know, where the Grafton Trails was originally, you know, for lack of a better word, a playground for in-guests. You know, now it's really an opportunity for all kinds of events. And I've talked to a lot of people, and there's you know, sort of this idea that Grafton may not be the place where events are getting organized, but they're a venue. So what does it look like to be able to expand what we have? Was it parking? Is it you know, signage? Is it just you know, sort of the marketing and the media, that kind of stuff? What needs to happen in order to be able to help move what exists forward? So there is nothing at this point that's actually being decided, except for what is pie in the sky. What would we like to explore And then we need to get that into a grant and, hopefully get some money to be able to flush that out. So, that's really what, we wanted you all to be aware of, because obviously the town plan is filled with, the fact that outdoor recreation is a really important part of the town, for the town's future, part of the, the economic, base here. And so, this is, again, I'm talking about the group because I'm not actually, I'm not involved directly in these groups that have come together. But I think that, what they are looking at, and again, the town itself is already represented because of Village Park at the minimum. But there's a lot of interest in trying to see what the town, a big piece of the planning would be also being able to do surveys, maybe some focus groups, to really get an idea of what the town would like to see in terms of growth and what they want to see, we want to make sure that anything that enhances the experience is also going to bring more people in. And so how do we manage that? Where do we put restrooms? Where do we have, the kiosks and that kind of thing? So. Did you want to add anything, Bob?
No, it's just more informational for you there's a meeting tomorrow.
Yeah, so the group's meeting tomorrow. They've, I've sort of tried to, break the grant into bite-sized pieces. So we're gonna be talking about what each of these groups sort of envisions for what they would like to do or what they see the need for. And then, we're trying to get input from you all. Morgan's gonna be there tomorrow to represent the town. She's gonna be taking information back to the select board at your next meeting. We're just trying to be really sort of transparent about this and make sure that everybody at this point that wants to be involved as a GIA meeting before this one. Because there's a lot of interest, for example, again, in some of the more historical stuff like the soapstone quarries. And although they told me that was actually on Pinnacle Hill property and not the GIA property specifically.
But you're not connected to Pinnacle yet, or you're connected to Pinnacle already? Your organization, your collaboration?
In terms of just like talking with them, because like I said, I think that Grafton, again, there's not even right now any kind of updated map or brochure to hand in.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, it's the basics from just making sure that we have everything up to date as to what's available, and then seeing where connections might need to be happening. And then, of course, looking at when you got the Pinnacle, so people coming right through, over Bear Hill, right down. So of course, that would be a logical partnership and connection. And yes, I know that there are people in the GOA that have already been in touch with them. The only group that's received a grant from this particular funding source here in our area is Marlboro. They got funded last year for trail expansion and connection and branding and that kind of thing. So.
Is it strictly hiking?
No, it's everything.
So have you spoken with the outing club for some of the snowmobile trails?
Yeah, it would include, working,
Have you gotten involved?
that's-
Anyone in that group involved?
not yet.
No. Like to be a valuable resource.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a lot of trails. You cover some ground on a snowmobile, see a lot of Grafton.
I'd like to see the connection that you have. That could be with the schools,
Right.
our school, and also with Grace Cottage.
Yeah. So there has been talk about, again, increasing the user groups. So again, the fact we don't seniors have been mentioned specifically. One of the ideas is, if you have an hour, what can you do here? If you have a day, what can you do here? If you have 3 days, what can you do in the area, kind of thing. So building out, in terms of accessibility, in terms of, they want inclusion, they really want people to think about, and to your point, I mean, at the minimum, they've been talking about having, programs that are directly benefiting our low socioeconomic families. So some kind of a gear closet kind of thing where they can just come and check out equipment that might be, and so all of these things would be sort of looked at with some professional help to see, and then also, of course, input from the community itself. And then it puts us in a really competitive position to apply for an implementation grant that we could get the funding to make all this happen. So, it's it'd be.
How much money are you looking at?
So for the project developments, it's a minimum of 20,000 that you can ask for. So, you can ask for as much as you want. They've been very clear that, they'd like to try to fund as many projects as possible. So you don't want to, go overboard, but most of them have no maximums. It would, the reimbursement process would start, basically May or June, once they have the contracts, you get informed like in February, and then they have to work on the contracts. And then you have basically 2, what they call field seasons, in order to be able to do your work. So you can do it all the way through December 2025. But that wouldn't necessarily, we wouldn't necessarily need that long. A lot of those are from implementation and like the flood damage projects. But yeah, speaking of the schools, there's a lot of interest to look to see how more of the activities that happen here could be career exploration. And also opportunities for internships and those kinds of things. Again, the idea that if they could enhance what already exists, like out at the outdoor center, that could be a year loaning place to have kids from the schools come and learn how to be bike mechanics and help keep the equipment, things of that kind of thing. So working with after school programs, trying to get the camps, the big sort of elephant in the room is Act 250 and what kind of limitations it sets on what can happen out at the outdoor center specifically, but also could impact other spaces around the trails. So
I'll only add to the planning committee's information. Act 250 has been an issue for as long as I've been around. Bob Allen used to talk, we had to change it. Liz Mikowski, yours truly, have done Bubka. Our permit dates from 1993 when we lived in a different world. The official permit lists 3 allowed events a year. 2 of them are long gone. One of them is the VSO, that's the only one allowed. Whether the town picnic every year is even technically allowed within these 4 walls, I'm not sure. But it's definitely in need of updating, and we have had discussions with the local in Springfield, Act 250, well, I don't know what they call themselves. I have been told that they are a difficult group to deal with, so we shall be ready. I think you probably have experience with their.
Well, we've had experience with their being very arbitrary before, and not a fan of Act 250.
Some of the opponents, this goes back to the start of the trail. Some of the neighboring opponents no longer live here, so that will make things a little easier.
I remember that you had an awful time with one very close to the ponds out there that put most of the limitations on. And what really bothers me is that once you have the Act 250 on the Wyndham Foundation, everything the Wyndham Foundation has is subject to Act 250. No matter whether it's there or somewhere on the other side of town, it's all all subject to Act 250.
In any event, it is certainly on my calendar to file an amendment to our permit, what assistance I'll need, other folks in helping write that. And want to talk to the remaining neighbors, et cetera, some of whom are very friendly with the foundation. But that will be on the, it's on the horizon. I've said that a long time, but it was not.
Mhm.
If you sell a piece of land,
We had,
you Act 250 goes with it.
Yeah.
So does Act 250 impact what we're trying to do in our wastewater?
I don't think so. Has Joe ever been subject to Act 250?
Was Apple Orchard? I don't know.
I don't think he has. Problem is, that once you have the Act 250 on the owning entity, if you split property off, even though it had nothing to do with why the Act 250 was originally imposed, that piece of land now carries Act 250. And you have to go through the same approval process.
So, isn't it development on? Something, I remember Bill talking about this, looking over an acre, you require. What was that? Was 10? Thought they were looking at
I
an
mean,
acre,
it's certain, I think
Yeah.
it's certain types of things.
was it an acre in,
There was a potential loophole that, some people, those that are in favor of Act 250 consider it a loophole. And would have allowed somebody to, make a development on a less than 1 acre plot of land and not have that subject to Act 250. I believe the legislature was cowed into, changing things so that it was imposed.
that's where I'm getting that from.
That was about a year or two ago.
If you had more than 2, you'd have to have, if you had more than 1, you'd have to get. An Act 250. You're under an acre. But they. They didn't. What was that?
There was a situation that occurred about a year or two ago.
That's constantly changing now, and they wanna get more housing in Vermont, so I think they're really looking at Act 250. Put a housing development down there, Bob, and they probably say you go for it.
Yes.
it wasn't on our. It was the thing that Mike just been talking about. Making better use of the.
So if a school comes to cross country ski there, is that considered an event? Bus stops and. There's a little,
Middle school.
there's a
I'm not
little,
asking. They do come, they do come.
Yeah, it's some school.
That's why I say the written, if you read the official Act 250. Authority, whatever, from 1993, it makes absolutely no sense.
So rather than even fight, what's the downside with just going ahead and doing, you're not doing anything terrible.
yep,
Oh,
And,
yeah.
yeah,
No, you're right.
I
And
would
as
say-
I said, most of the original opponents many years ago, very few of them would even remember them. Eric, maybe Mark, you might remember.
Well, I know a lot of the improvements to the trails, specifically on Grafton Trails, especially for the mountain biking, that kind of thing, anything that could increase erosion, any kind of banking, even just putting in any more the little bridges and that kind of thing. I mean, there's just really tiny things that they won't allow you to do. Even some of the brush hogging, I mean, they're really strict about that kind of thing. So it does limit the ability for the trails to really just sort of enhance the experience or to really be seen as a venue the way that it is now. So I think that's part of what, and certainly bringing in a specialist, some kind of consultant would help us to look at that. But we were just really interested in, sort of knowing what's in your heads, as you look forward. With the planning for the town. The kinds of things that you all are, looking to include in your next town plan or that have come up during your discussions and that kind of thing. Any of that kind of sort of visioning that you all think might be relevant to what this group is trying to do would be great to hear.
Well, it's all part of the economic development of Grafton, recreation, everything.
Yeah,
Our septic system, not part of our economic development. It can't just become a Cambridgeport or an Athens. I mean, really? I mean, we've got too much here. And I think everyone needs to realize that if you live out of town. And if you don't want to be part of the town, then that's your business, but if the town village goes out. The taxes on your home out in the country or away from the village are gonna increase. A lot,
Just have to go to someplace like Rutland and ask the people there,
exactly.
what happens when the economic pulse of the town is cut off, because people are paying triple, sometimes quadruple what their taxes were 8 years ago.
And it's gonna happen in Burlington next. It is
Yeah.
happening in Burlington.
The town still has an infrastructure it has to support, therefore the money has to come from somewhere. And if you collapse the economic engine of the village, everybody else has to pick up.
And there it is. That's the
Schools
answer.
closed, roads don't get taken care of, bridges don't get rebuilt.
Yeah.
There are towns that stop functioning as towns. So it's not, fear mongering is the reality.
yeah, but then we also just wanna be cognizant of the fact that the people who live here love this town right as it is. So if you're looking to expand, if there's a place where, we're gonna need an in and out for buses, or again, where do we put this kiosk? In fact, that was the discussion with the GIA. Is that the ball field would be a nice place because of the parking lot and that kind of thing, to have some kind of visitor center, some kind of a hub. But does what I call the contract on that piece of property, does it allow for a building when it's for recreational purpose? So there's just little stuff like that, and again, if we can pull together a competitive proposal, which I really think we can, because I think that this group is really well represented with nonprofits and with grassroots and with town municipal representation and large landowners and that kind of thing. So it would really get us to the point where then we can really dig in and see, where things might be able to go, where we might be able to expand, where we might want to improve a parking area, just things like that, without disrupting, the sort of the flow of the town as it is now. And I think that's where it's gonna be really important to get as much local voice and opinion and input. And there's a lot of wonderful and historic minds around here. So I think it's just really, we're gonna work really hard to try to get everybody's input on this when we get it, which of course we're going to. But we can make ourselves available for any, and again, tomorrow is gonna be sort of a big sort of fleshing out what are some of the top priorities, and we'll share that with people as we can. The grant's due December 15th. So
Thank you, Meg. What time's the meeting tomorrow?
at 11, over at the end.
Do you need anyone from the planning commission to be represented?
I'd love it if
I
somebody can
can't
come.
personally, but if anyone else is in town. 11 o'clock's tough.
Yeah. But love to, we can, I can shoot you an email with some of the things that came up.
Absolutely.
As a-
I recall sending
Pardon?
grant
Yes,
information. I sent it to you way back. We got some grant information to pass along.
For the next, she said.
I'm wondering if this is one of them.
Let's see.
Is there any other public comment? Oh, any public comment?
Just say thank you for doing all the research that you have done to this point.
Yeah,
Really,
thank
it
you.
means a lot.
We'll keep it moving forward. I think. We'll meet as a planning commission, with probably maybe an agenda item. For that. For the select board. Thank you.
Well, if you want to get on,
Thanks, thanks.
if you want to get on the agenda from today, let me know. Put it on. You're ready, or maybe
I don't know if we're ready
a couple of weeks.
Monday, maybe for the December, maybe. Just a little bit tonight and then we're getting close to 9 o'clock here, but, maybe for December we can.
Yeah.
Present, well, there's two parts of this, one is the vote. Then you need to kind of move into an agenda item, right? And the second is having a. What we would call a liaison. Person to,
No, I think the term ombudsman, I think really gives a good description of, somebody who's caretaking the movement and trying to provide structure and support for that. Like that,
We're thinking of Chris for that. Anthony,
Chris or Anna's interested.
Yeah.
Fresh, energetic look.
I mean, I think in terms of my participation, I think if you all discuss the things that you really want that person to do. And again, create a profile of the responsibilities you would want them to have and how often they report and all that. That'd be really helpful in figuring out who's the person who can do that job.
Okay. Well, we're gonna move backwards to a couple of items. Any Wyndham regional update? No, thanks a lot.
We have a natural resources committee tomorrow, and I know we've been working on a lot of the language regarding the plan and some of that. They've often said some of this is gonna have to be in the town plan. But I don't think it's, but I'm just, that's a work in progress, probably for all companies.
And what's it in relation to?
The mission plan.
Oh, their
Which is, yeah,
county plan. Yeah.
right, yes, we've been looking at, like, in the natural resource, we've been looking at all the natural resources. Policies and procedures,
You're looking at,
classifications.
right,
what are you looking at, energy?
not in that,
Don't,
I mean, not under natural resources. There is are you on the energy?
I'm on the energy. Yeah. We've been working on that. So
Thank you.
what I'm concerned about is the classifications relative to energy, which they've been dodging that for a long time. What is what is resource land? What is critical resource land? What is rural terminology here. Rural productive land is the next step down.
Yeah,
Figuring out what applies to each one of those categories is really has very strong implications for energy projects. Sure, but for other things,
yeah, so that that was a few meetings ago when we were talking about those categories. And I think tomorrow what we're supposed to get and look at is I don't know if it's the revisions, the proposed revisions yet, so. But there were definitely concerns about the current categories. We talked about that.
We still have time with our town plan, but clock keeps ticking. Yeah. Closer and closer to. Redoing that. hopefully no surprises as we get into it. With changes, right?
There may be some changes that have to, follow changes at the state level that is imposed on town plans, but
Mm,
I don't know what those are at this point. We're pretty well up to date on most everything. We'll see.
hope that those changes aren't counterproductive to economic,
Of course.
values of small towns. You're gonna stop us from doing anything? All right, well, thank you for that update. Our 2024 budget, yeah, mention 1,000, I think it's 1,500 that we're looking at.
I'd like to see one item, and I don't know what it's gonna cost, added to the system. And that is to make the whole system there
Mhm.
have good audio. Zooming in. You can see people move their mouths. And you can hear a kind of mumble coming
Yeah.
out, but you cannot. At least my ears don't pick up exactly what they're saying, and considering the whole system has been used successfully a lot of places. Can't believe that they all have the lousy audio that we have. And I'd like to have it fixed.
So if it's in our budget, then it's upon us to find the right.
Quite frankly, I don't think the select board cares. Maybe they do, but they would rather have everybody come in person. But for us that occasionally like to zoom in, it limits us to not understanding what's going on very well. It's really a struggle.
Yeah.
Audio needs to be fixed.
I know in the past we'd had, I think we were like 2,500 at one time, was including our administrator time. Do we need to look at Morgan as helping us from time to time?
Yeah, I think so. If she were not here to help us with that big Zoom meeting we had.
Yeah, it
before,
wasn't, that wasn't gonna happen, yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't have happened at all. That came off pretty well. But it wouldn't without her. So we should include, I think. We should think about it.
$1,000 for the year. We may not need it, but
Yeah.
let's
right.
figure her for
Yeah.
a couple of hours once a month.
We've got occasional education that sometimes is available, like through Mount Lebanon cities and towns or some other kinds of organizations that we can basically educate ourselves for. That's one, and that would cover things like registration and travel expenses. And we should have something in there to be able to help people come in to talk to us or talk to the select board.
Mhm.
So,
But to Tana,
yes,
what should we include in that? Call it education.
yeah, education and accommodation could at least cover someone's expenses.
Because they travel in education.
There'll be occasions when it would be nice at least to cover their meal expense to come here.
Yep.
It's not like we're out in the tropics where you can drop around the corner and get something to eat.
We had
$5 a night.
$500 for that. I'm going with 1,500 as our base, that's
Yeah,
what- I think
yeah.
that's what we had. Maybe you said 1,000,
It's just that, and then I know it's in the last. Meeting we had. So I had asked you, did you put something in?
yeah, but who came up with 1,000? So. I believe it was more than that,
I think before that you had a little bit more.
at one time it was 2,500, that's when we had Bill as administrator, and then I think we
Yeah.
dropped it to 15, not 1,000. And it's, whatever. Say we went with a 1,500 base, and we had. Another 1,000 for administration, 500 for education and travel, we're up to, $3,000.
Does that include already, the audio?
That includes,
The
no, what should we,
I just looked that up, it's 1,800
for,
for an owl system with improved audio.
I think,
I got an expansion mics depending on the model for.
Well, we already have the basic part of the Allen system.
Depending on the
Did
model,
the-
you can get
what's that
expansion
for?
mics.
It's an
We need to-
updated model.
Pick up the-
Had a tech person.
So it sounds like Buzz knows.
Yeah,
And basically, if all is okay, it's the computer, so. Morgan had to get a new computer.
so, right, the computer was too slow.
Oh, okay.
is that what was causing
Yeah.
the lousy quality of the audio?
Yeah,
But sometimes I've been on and you can hear some people very well and you cannot hear other, and they're
Yeah,
not necessarily
terrible.
farther.
yeah.
It would also might be nice to enhance the higher frequencies. For us, whole parts that. can't hear anymore.
Everybody who whispers,
And bigger conference rooms, a lot of times we do need kind of an expansion mic.
I would write it all up, if you write it all up, give it to Morgan, you can put it on the agenda, or put it on the budget. Our last budget meeting, I think, is. Beginning of the month. the 30th.
I mean, it wouldn't necessarily have to go on the planning commission. But if the select board is not gonna do anything about it, I think we should. Or it's a-
how about we had 1,000? For audio visual improvements,
Should be a good something.
Buzz, what were you saying about what's needed?
Well, it depends on the model, I haven't looked at it, but you can get expansion mics for some of the systems that are extend the range. You know,
I thought we had those,
I didn't see.
no, we don't use the mics anymore,
We used to have them when we had our meetings up at the garage.
and we use them at the school. That's mostly for-
Misplaced
Yeah.
one.
Well, it increases the volume in the room, and therefore the owl would pick up that. Or would you have feedback with that? That's where you need a technician to figure that out.
Yeah. We've got enough height up there so that you could have a central mic hanging.
Yeah.
from-
Dr. Morgan, because she's the one, she was at that meeting when the tech guy came, so. And what his recommendations were. She was looking at. He basically said, no, you're good. You're set up here in the town hall is fine, it's your computer.
Hmm.
And I told her at the school, we have the owl and it had to be updated. And she looked into that, and she said, no, it's okay. So we had problems every night.
Kind of problems that I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
but
Well, the owl,
You've been to enough meetings. What are other people using?
Yeah, I think microphones are
people couldn't hear.
usually a big component, and computers. 'Cause
Mm.
my old computer does not
She did
process
something with
Zoom.
the owl and it woke up.
Everybody
so I-
speaks in slow motion. So,
Yeah.
Our corporate headquarters was on a computer period, so I'm not sure what he's talking about. What we were talking about feeding to the Zoom meetings.
It has to feed to the Zoom meeting, yeah. Here's it's gonna talk to the Zoom, I don't even know if this thing's working properly,
Any more?
well. Is it? Nobody's been on, I've been kind of checking,
It says it's recording.
Yeah.
But it says that there.
yeah, but are we transmitting on Zoom,
Oh,
you know?
I don't use Zoom anymore, I'm on Microsoft Teams.
You want me to stop it? I don't know what's up.
No, leave it.
Leave it,
Still have a
okay.
meeting.
Yeah.
At least get the recording.
Hmm. Seems like it,
I vote it's weird, it's not like, it's not Teams.
Really,
Gives me an error messages. Put on my computer.
That's when we went to,
well, we've got a configured, once you get used to it, it looks pretty well. Plus the interface with, you know, all your other Microsoft application.
When I present the budget, do I itemize it or just do a lump sum, here's what we want?
you can do a sum, but you should, they're gonna say, well, what do you need that money for? What are you gonna use it for? So I would put it in. somewhere.
Fishing boat?
Yeah, yeah, script somewhere. I did tell her that, I was coming to this meeting tonight and, she asked me about the agenda for Monday, if I wanted to add anything, it's one in May after this meeting, so.
Okay. And she needs it for,
Pretty sure it's the 30th of the meeting again.
you know, that's gonna be etched in stone to go in the, town report.
Yeah,
Is that all we need to give you at this point? I gotta do a
oh, you gotta do a letter,
letter.
I think that's due sometime in December, January. Tim will tell you. That's what.
We have to motion the budget.
It'd be a good idea, yeah.
Alright, so I started with a $1,500 base.
Yeah.
Yeah.
$1,000 administration, $500 education and travel. $1,000 for audio visual improvements, $4,000.
Now, the select board may say the audio visual is not appropriate for our budget, and put it on the select board, but one way or another, we need to have that covered. Let's go with the 4,000.
They can always say, oh, we'll take that. Yes. What about our educational for wastewater? Do we propose that to the select board that here's what we have?
That really should be under the select board.
Financially,
Yeah,
and they should also make the decision, but we can give them a recommendation, just like anything
yeah,
else we do, it's a recommendation. Correct?
and that, yeah, and that has to be done quickly. Because the education is. You gotta get ahead of anybody that's chomping at the bit for some kind of a town vote, because I think there's some feeling out there that I don't need it. It doesn't really benefit me. Give me a chance to shoot it down without really understanding all
No,
the implications of that.
no, Ty and Bond just gives us their 30, 60, 90 reports, that's it. They won't do anything else and go to the town and say, oh, this is what we can do and blah, 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 they don't want anything to do with that. We need that liaison.
Well,
I mean-
before the 30% meeting came up, people were saying, we're not gonna do this. We can't.
So if we can educate them before the 90%, a
Right,
little bit,
right.
It would be nice to maybe understand what's gonna be in that 90% as well, because
I don't think that's gonna be much.
the one thing people remember from that 60% meeting is $8 billion.
exactly.
That's the only thing.
that was a low number.
Yeah, actually, yeah,
That's it.
more like 8.5, I think, right? Or there was a range.
Yeah, they went up to 18.
But when they hit that, when, after the meeting, when people were talking to me, that's what they were talking about.
Yeah.
So. It's good to have the report out meeting, but you know, if you're really gonna, part of your education might be to shape that meeting as well and how it's. During.
You should revisit Emily Hackett's comments about grant coverage.
Well, and a negative narrative already exists, it's not one you have to create, but it is one you should know all facets of. And it should be one that people get to articulate with a sense of release, right? I don't wanna, why should I invest in a system that only helps, this is what will be said, second homeowners who've come into the community anyway, who have these homes in the downtown. Even though we know that's not entirely the story, it's not true, but there is we feel it in Manchester all the time, there's a threat of like. People coming and making decisions for our town, and then we're stuck paying the cost for those people when they come in. And so if the narrative can be fleshed out that already exists that's negative, then you can say, let's tell a different story. Let's talk about the revenue that comes in. Let's talk about the love people have for the town. Let's talk about what it means to have people in our town who treasure this and are willing to do what they can with their money. They're willing to put their businesses here or their homes here because they believe in the vision of this town and the people, right? So we take a narrative and we transpose it to create a positive narrative out of something that can be very negative. And you give space for people to air their grievances in healthy ways, not in cruel and non-community ways, right? But even if you need to go and schedule an appointment with every naysayer and say, I want to hear why you're upset about this and why it's so important to you. Tell me why it's important. I'll listen without telling you why you're wrong.
I believe everything you say. We have a $4 million gap.
Yep.
We have 100 people to pay for it.
Yep.
And we might not even have 100. We may have 50. That's $80,000 each. How can we build an education program that's going to persuade 50 to 100 people to pay $40,000 to $80,000 out of our own pocket to put in a wastewater system because the town wants us to pay for this utility? It seems like
It's not fair.
I just don't see it. It seems so huge to me to try to come up with a story to persuade me to spend $40,000 to $80,000.
I don't,
When I am really, really, truly not convinced
So. what
that
you were
every
saying-
alternative has been explored. I'm sorry, but I didn't mean
Oh,
to.
no, you're good. What you were saying about, they were saying there might be other grants for, options that needs to be part of it. Like you were saying, bring it back in.
We have an alternative solution and there's some other funding that could help support that. But we gotta have that evidence.
Yeah,
well, and I don't think we create a narrative that convinces people to put $80,000 into a program. That is not what I think we convince people to do.
But
I
that's
think-
the reality of the situation.
But we educate people, we provide a forum for people to understand the entire impact of the problem. And part of that impact of problem is the $80,000 it will cost a ton of people. So understanding the full impact and saying we have to make a decision. That we're not at a point where we can just not make a decision anymore. Because if you vote no for this will be a vote again in your lifetime. Because something will be troubling. So I think what it is you educate the voting population not to implant into them a decision. But to say, I want you to make your no with the most amount of information possible, including the fallout. So that you're prepared for that. And I want to provide you with the community support to make your no as an informed citizen, not as somebody who's reacting simply out of a logical, holy crap, I can't afford 80 grand. Right, like
Where did it go from?
I can't afford 80 grand, I have to make some repairs to my house and I got the ticket and I almost fell over in shock, right? Like, I understand that, but this is not to persuade people to vote the way you want them to, it's to
No, I
give
understand.
them.
I really, really do. I just think that when you're sitting in this situation as a resident of the village, and believe me, I've been an advocate of this water system all along, and I was thrilled when we got the $4 million. But when I think about either having the right to vote up or down for this situation, when it's knowing that it's gonna cost $4 million more, and we're gonna have to divide that cost among the people in the district. Or worse yet, if we have a town meeting where there are over 500 voters, and only 100 of us or less are impacted. And those 500 decide that we should pay the $40,000 to $80,000. I don't feel particularly good about that either. And so I'm not sure. I have two major concerns. One is I'm not convinced that we have enough data about potential alternative systems. And number two, I would like for the select board to be very mindful about any kind of situation they would put citizens of the village in versus citizens of the town. We don't want another divisive issue in our town. We all pay for our highways. We all pay for our schools. And I'm really struggling with the logic around why only 100 of us or less would be paying for this utility. So it's just not, it's not clear to me we have yet an education substance content to put forward. I just don't know what we're gonna say to people about that. Does what I say make any sense?
No, yes, correct.
Absolutely understand.
I'm just wondering as a potential next step, and I totally respect and agree with what Eric is saying about we don't want to come into the position of doing anything other than complimenting what Ty and Bond is doing. I totally get that.
Well,
But would it be straying too far from that? If we just somehow commissioned a research project to get us some more data on this biological system. With an estimate of if it's feasible, how much it would cost. If we spent 4 weeks doing that and a certain amount of money doing that, would that be? Kathy, what would your opinion be? Would that be an affront to the select board? Would they be concerned about that? Because we don't want to do that.
I think if you give them the education of why you want. You've got information here, it's gonna put in a package to give us.
the biological system is not an alternative to what Ty and Bond is proposing. The $8 million stays $8 million regardless of whether it's a biological treatment of the water or not.
If it's in the same footprint, I was talking about Matt's alternative about the smaller.
Granted, if you had.
Eric, how are you gonna
It's
convince people to spend more than it? If it's on top of the 8 million.
But what I'm trying to say is, spending more time pretending that the biological system is going to be an alternative to what Ty and Bond has come up with is just not. It's not correct. So
Okay.
you have to have 95% of what Ty and Bond has come up with to add this 5% of the water purification, further purification system on top of it. It's not an alternative, it's an addition, that may make the water purity that we're putting back in the ground better. And you still got the $8 million to deal with. Either way.
And with the $8 million, they just came up with that figure, $8 million. They haven't itemized that at all.
No,
They haven't said, okay, here's what it's gonna cost to do this, 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 and this. In other words,
They did in the 60% plan. I don't think they pulled that number out of the hat.
Not a lot of people.
there wasn't a lot of detail in it at all.
Okay.
That's where you start getting this thing out. And if you have an engineer,
Look, you've done the research, and if what Eric says is absolutely true. That the $8 million is the baseline, and we're just kidding ourselves if we think we have an alternative. If that's what the planning commission has come to in its research on alternative systems. Okay, I just didn't realize that that was necessarily the case. And that's what I wanted to understand coming to this meeting, if there were any other alternatives to the $8 million project.
One of the things that's floating out there is from the state on this filtration system. And Charlie Bowen is one of your supporters here that had, get him on board. Cause he wants water, so he can drink water.
I mean, filtration, I mean, water. I mean,
They wanna put a filter system, the state has said to Charlie that. State was working on a filter system for these homes that. And filter their water from the PFAs. And. It's kind of dead in the water right now. Because state's saying, yes, we can do it, and then they say no, they're not gonna do it.
Hmm.
It's.
So that's still different than,
Yeah.
different project,
Different
different several $1 million additional or more than.
But if people hear about, oh, we can get this filter system in, then we don't need this other stuff.
Right, that's a fallacy, right?
Yeah.
There's the exchange there that is, it's not, you know, this is not Sophie's choice and we get one of our kids, but not both. This is, those two are not necessarily even related at this point. I think from what I've heard tonight, there is a waste gray water problem that is not going away, that Ty and Bond originally said there is no solution for. We're so sorry. You'll have to just let yourselves out. Yeah, right. I mean, it's like telling a cancer patient that you don't have anything left to offer them. And then somebody says, what about this? And throws a Hail Mary, this committee, and says, wait, we found something. We found an alternative. And they said, oh, well, let's research that. Huh, there is an alternative, a very expensive alternative, and we think it starts around $8,000. So then there's the idea of adding, supplementing that with the native plant sequestration and constructed wetlands to try to shrink the footprint, not necessarily the bill, to shrink the footprint of this, to provide the resource to be challenged and changed in a different way. And so part of what you're facing is something has to happen, because the option of doing nothing is not on the table. The option of voting no is on the table. And if people vote no, then you say, okay, you voted no, but we still have this problem. How do you see us solving this problem? And I think a lot of times people, when they say no, it's because they can't afford it. It's overwhelming. It doesn't feel fair, but the problem doesn't go away because you voted no. So then what happens? And have you answered that question? Have you thought about, if they vote no on this proposal, we're back at the drawing board, and we spent,
It's an awful outcome.
yeah, $60,000 or something for the report to do nothing on it. How long is that report good for? How long will the state allow people to continue to use water in their homes? How many flushes do you have a day? How many sink fills of dishes do you get to do, right? How many people are allowed to come visit you, right? So then you begin to look at, these are the realistic fallout comments of voting no. And it's not to say we all want you to pay this money. It's saying we have to vote yes to do this. Maybe we need to start a grant hunt for anything that can help us, whether it's a $50 grant or a $500,000 grant to just pay for this. Maybe we need to have a pledge campaign with people who love Grafton and say, you know, I know that you're not required by the bond to pay this, but you really love this town, and we know that you have liquidable assets that you put into the town every year. Would you be willing to make a $50,000 contribution to help a family who can't pay the $80,000? Right? There are ways that you begin to have to piecemeal it, but it's not pretty.
what about the Ames Hall fund? Is there any money there that could help people?
Question.
That's a
That
good
is a good
question.
question.
Because
it
it
called?
is health related.
Ames Hall Foundation. Maybe,
It's really gonna be hard to make an $80,000 pitch to people who don't even have a vote. I mean, you disenfranchise people and then you turn right around and give them $80,000. And that's, these things are really hit hard. I mean, people around in our village don't have generators because they cost $10,000.
And what happens if you're faced with an $80,000 bill for selling your home and leaving?
Well, these are Hobbesian choices, obviously. I mean. But at a certain level, it starts feeling like poison. It's not a good
So
feeling.
somebody needs to look into that. So if a water district or fire district, find out if the formation of such gives you different voting constituencies. I think it might.
Thank you, Eric. I think that's a really great suggestion.
With the water district.
You know. They're also sometimes called fire districts. It's
Yeah.
actually a separate municipality. Can imagine that.
And my house falls on the edge of two. So it's tons of fun. Half the house is, we have to have our own septic, but we have town water because we fall on this weird little division line. So the water line comes in on the one property and side of the property, and on the other side is where our leach system is. The leach field is.
So you're saying it's a separate municipality,
It-
fire district.
Yeah, as far as I know they did it for Guilford relative to septic about 15 or 20 years ago. That's the only time I've heard about it in this area. But it's a different legal entity, and it's something that
Maybe Seth can.
a lot, yeah, Seth should dig into that seriously.
That might help alleviate. And Buzz makes a good point too. If the $8 million wasn't itemized and it turned out to be 6 instead of 8, that's a different story.
And that handling packet
It was kind of thing, the other,
no,
What's that, Buzz?
I wasn't thinking it was gonna go down.
the handling packet,
No.
the
I mean,
handling packet was very good.
consultants rarely
They had
reduce
the
their
age.
price over time.
I'm almost certain that Emily said that the extra money that was being talked about at that meeting could come under, the grant, so I'm not convinced that you don't have the basis there. Somebody needs to research that.
And then ombudsman should be the person who helps to research those questions as well.
Sure.
To say, I need to call the lawyer, we need to have this, we need to call the town of Guilford and see what happened, I need to talk to the municipal branch that already exists, right? Like somebody who is willing to do those different steps.
Yeah, it should all fall on Morgan's shoulders.
No, she's got enough to do.
And you don't want her to become a target, right, of
Yeah,
people's fire
yeah.
in the town.
Yeah.
Now, I get to leave the town and go deal with my own town's mess. Right,
Right.
So, it's, that can be the risky part of somebody locally taking on something, it can be really harmful for them.
So you live in Manchester or Rutland?
Manchester, you live in Rutland.
Oh,
Hannah, without putting you on the spot, what would you say what cost might be?
When I worked with Deming Pond folks in East Dorset, it was a 2-year battle with the state. It ended up costing them about $3,200 for my services, and that included the testing. I did all the testing for them and all their water testing and all of the land surveys and historic data, and I had to hire aquatic anthropologists and archaeologists. I mean, the craziness.
So that they were funded through whatever budget you had to do all this.
Yeah, well, they basically said, how much is it gonna cost us? And I said, no idea, because there's no precedence for this, and you have the oldest man-made pond in the state of Vermont that has historic precedence, so now you have to contact Native American tribes and Historic Society and all this. And so there's no precedent, I have no idea, but we can cap it and say, after this, we don't afford anymore. And so they voted $5,000. I came in under, which is not very common, but my goal is not to make a profit, it's to really help people move forward on those things. So a project of this scope and size, depending on when your vote is, that makes a big difference, because if you have to get a bunch of work done really quickly, then I have to put other projects aside. So I'd say it would be reasonable to expect between $3,500 and $4,000. But I don't bill unless it's actual hours, so you don't get a bill for me for $4,000 if I've only done $2,800 worth of work.
And what about a 4-week project to look into alternatives? What would that cost?
Well, 4 weeks, depending on, you know, if you want me to be a dog with a bone who's focused entirely on that, then I would have to get you. I'd have to crunch some numbers, but, it would probably end up being around the same amount rather than a spread out period of time, because I'm condensing all that time into 4 weeks. And again, I'm putting aside other projects that I have, and I have 3 other consulting projects right now, so. But it's certainly something, if you wanted, I could say, I will do 20 hours a week, I will do 10 hours a week, I will do 35 hours a week. You can set your budget and say, we only have $1,000 for this, okay, well, I'm gonna donate. Or I'm gonna designate an hour a day to making phone calls and emails and going to libraries and historic site, right, like, whatever that may be.
I will pay you $1,000 to do the project. Did I have to know myself? I have to feel comfortable myself. That any other system is a dream. I really do. And that way it's not gonna conflict with the select board, it won't be coming from the planning commission, it's gonna be coming from me personally. And if you're okay with that.
I've never had that offer before, so if you would like me to endeavor upon a research project. To research other viable, now, are we
Well,
talking?
wait, I want to talk to Matt in the planning commission. Would you feel offended or affronted in any way if I took this project on personally?
You would streamline it.
Quick action, I don't think we'd spend by that.
No.
Look, I'm investing $1,000 and maybe not having to pay 80. It's a very good return.
So you asking me to research alternatives to tie and bond, or are you asking me to research?
Whether such a system as a smaller footprint with bio organisms cleaning the water exists and is feasible in Grafton, Vermont.
As an alternative to the drip system or in tandem with?
Not in tandem with. Definitely not in
No,
tandem
As
with.
the
It's a smaller footprint, lower cost alternative. I mean, right now, we've got one alternative to consider. With the 8 million, we have 2 alternatives to consider with a layer of the plant, which is gonna take the cost even higher. I've got to know if there's a smaller system out there.
I will research this. And I will formulate a report for you, and you will be the owner of the report.
Right.
And who you choose to share it with and how you choose to use it would be you. But it would have to be very clear that I am not doing this on behalf of the town of Grafton, nor am I doing this in contradiction to tie and bond. But I am instead doing this as a private researcher for you to provide alternative information. And whether or not it's viable is not necessarily something I can guarantee that I will find out. Because I cannot do the environmental engineering plan to see if it's viable versus what tie and bond has obviously already accomplished. I can present you with whether or not the professionals in this field say a system is feasible. And if so, what they would need to do in order to do a
Well,
feasibility
no, what
study.
I'm looking for is who would be the supplier,
Okay,
for whom would we be a customer? In such a system.
We've already,
And I think that you,
we've already talked to them.
Yeah.
We've got Rob, we've got Oakson, you missed the meeting with Oakson, did you? On the drip system,
mhm,
and Dave.
Yeah.
Dave mentioned. The whole complication of living systems that we're in the Northeast, if we were down in Florida or Arizona, it would be a piece of cake. Cause
okay,
you don't need a greenhouse, you just put it out in the
Mhm.
meadow and it works year round. Up here, it would work 8 months of the year, 4 months, you gotta consider this living machine would be frozen. That's why you put it in a greenhouse,
Mhm.
okay? Dave mentioned, all you're gonna do is put it in a large. See. Area that's covered and keep it at like October weather.
yeah. So you need to make sure that your ground is not freezing, you're maintaining temperatures between 45 and 60 degrees. And you also have to have a rotational cropping system for those plants because they have a natural growth cycle. Unless you're doing something like in Sharon, we're going to tropical plant.
Yep.
Because if you're utilizing something like cattails, for instance, which are used down south for this almost thoroughly, I mean, that's, everybody's using some form of cattail down south. They have a natural life cycle, so they have plants at different ages in the system so that they're constantly in a cycle of growth, but that takes a lot of land. So if you're going to reduce that land footprint, and that's one of the goals is to have a more compact system, then you're talking about going to tropical plants that require a much balmier inside temperature.
So really, that's great. All I'm looking for is somebody who would give us a quote. Give us a quote on such a system. And would it be suitable for the pumping district, the district that's been designated by Ty and Bond as the one that we need to solve this problem for?
And I think you also, again, if you really, I think you also have to somehow or another find out whether if this system, whatever it is gonna be fundable. Because that is
Right.
still one of the problems that we've understood.
That's right, that's right, that's right, yeah. Yeah, yeah, and even if, I mean, Lester, the question could be what Eric said. No, it's a dream, it's a fantasy, you're kidding yourself. And then we wouldn't have to worry about whether it's fundable or not.
Yeah. Agreed.
So I think the first order of business is to find out if there is a source for supplying a system that would be smaller and plant-based to solve the problem that we have in our village. But maybe I'm wrong, maybe, I mean, what do you think? Do you think I should not do this?
I appreciate your offer. In order for us to do it, we'd have to get approval from the select board. It's off the record. And the information is yours. It helps us if you do find the solution. I don't know, I don't think I could give you an answer, yes or no, honestly.
Why don't I say this? How about I take some time and do a teacup version of research to see if a bigger research project A is necessary, or B, what would be required? Does somebody need to have a feasibility study and flow test of groundwater? Does somebody need to have a complete survey of the proposed land? In doing some of these projects, inevitably the state of Vermont wants to have some things done in the feasibility study, or else they won't even consider a proposal unless the feasibility study included things like a survey.
Which time bonds and all that,
Right, so
that's a public document.
if that's a public document that's helpful, is that accessible, that information, I mean, does that belong to the town of
It's on
Grafton?
the website.
Perfect, okay. So I think if I do a teacup bit of research and say, this is gonna take way more, and this really doesn't look to be like an option, especially given A, B, or C, then we stop.
Yeah.
And I would say that I would be willing to do that for you. And we could talk about what that cost is. I don't think $1,000 is, I don't like putting out blanket fees like that. To talk about my normal research fee and say we're setting a budget to do this, and then we'll go forward. But I will be very honest with you, and this is my professional opinion, and also as a person who really cares about what's going on here. I think that you're going to find that you're going to have a new set of problems. Finding the land you need, having access to the ground you need, and building the infrastructure that allows for the system to work in the way that you're envisioning it, that may still require a several $1 million infrastructure program just to erect a smaller footprint. It may be more beautiful. But I think you'll end up finding that you're going to be in a very similar situation with what you're dealing with now. And it may not reduce your cost at all. So I don't want to be negative, and I'm happy to ask those questions to people. But those systems are not cheap. And a lot of the reason why they haven't become standard in the United States is because they are exorbitant in their long term. If that's the entire system, where they use them in Florida or in Alabama, they have all those seasons to use it. Where they use them in the Netherlands, they don't. And in the Netherlands, those costs are through the roof. So there's like different things that are a part of that. So I want to be very honest with you and saying that I will provide information to you, but I cannot give you a yes or no answer other than what that information kind of leads me to. And I don't want to produce an unrealistic expectation for you, either as a client or as a human being, of what I could provide for you.
Okay. Kathy, what do you think I should do?
As Matt said, I think your intent's really nice that you wanna offer that. But I'm tending to think about what Ty and Bond has done. And I think gonna hit that roadblock that she just mentioned, that it's gonna be an expensive cost. But I can see, I'd like to see something happening, at least do some kind of research that we have all this information. There's gotta be money out there
Yeah,
to do it.
what comes down to, we talked about earlier, spend $8 million on something you never see. Or maybe it's $8 million on something like, wow, you've got an attraction, like, you know.
Outdoor recreation
Yeah.
There's your outdoor
attraction.
recreation. No,
If it's agreeable to the planning commission, and I know, I really feel very self-conscious that I've taken up all your time here. I think I would like to personally engage Hannah in a teacup project. And the future dealings would be just between her and me. And then I'll probably want to share in public comments what I found out,
mhm.
okay? And then I think it would help me if I did this, be a better advocate for what's gonna happen. And in the situation I'm in of being so closely aligned with this water project for many years, to turn out to be a no vote would really, wow, I can't imagine that coming full circle for me personally. And that's where I'm standing right now.
Well, I'll entertain a motion perhaps that does the planning commission take $1,000 to do just what?
I think it puts you in a very, I think Kathy, whom I have relied on for years as my sounding board. I think Kathy put it perfectly. If there's a roadblock waiting out there, and it's better for me to face that than for you. So we'll take that on personally. This may go nowhere, but it certainly is not official town of the Grafton business. It's just between a citizen, I can do anything I want, to hire somebody to go do anything. I mean, there will be people who say no to that, and then I'm the troublemaker, but yeah.
That I can see the planning commission coming to us, the select board. With more information and with Hannah's help. Like, she's organized all this. Less than an hour. I got more information out of here, just as a group talking. Than the 60% need. I mean, it's just, again, it's my thing. And Suzanne knows where I'm coming from. Cause they kind of say it out there, yeah, this is what we're talking about. I am disappointed with Ty and Bond. Not giving us information. As they said they were going to. On an ongoing basis, and I've gone to some of these meetings and I walk away going, what did I just hear? What? You know, they're not pulling it together. And I think they hit the roadblocks. Nobody wants to give their land, nothing for, nothing, you know. All the way down the line, and then you get the 60% and you see there's the money issue and how they try to break it down and make it make sense. When I first looked at it, it says, oh, it's not too bad, $3,500 or whatever they came up with. But then once you look at it, it's like, this isn't fair. Why isn't the town picking this up, the whole bill for everybody? That's shared with the whole town, not just the village.
Well, we
There.
still have a $4 million grant.
I don't wanna lose
You don't
that.
wanna lose it.
You don't wanna lose that. We'll never get that again. Never in a.
So you're not looking at 80,000, you're looking at 40,000. Because.
No.
That's, I mean, if it's 80,000, you can buy a truck. You got 40,000, you can buy a, 40,000, you can buy a small sedan.
Okay, I think from this point, Hannah and I will exchange contact information and we'll take it from here. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to the planning commission for having this conversation and for allowing this kind of support to happen. I'm really worried.
And I think we see where you're coming from, Suzanne, because. If I was living in the village, I'd wanna know more, and if you need the teacup fund to help yourself. But there's so many roadblocks out there
Yes.
that we gotta figure it all out,
Yes,
and you
yes.
can't do it by yourself. You
No,
can't
no,
do it.
no, 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 no. I understand that, Kathy, and I'll be back to the public bodies that are responsible for all this as soon as I get my teacup. Okay?
But Hannah, thank you so much.
And Hannah, thank you so much, yeah.
I like how you organized it, you pulled everybody together.
Did you? I need to speak in-
Really,
You don't think it's really fair. Okay. Oh, I can take this. An old fashioned card?
I know.
I'm sitting over my own.
There's something nice about holding something in your hand, right?
All right, Hannah, I'll be back. Okay. And, Matt, thank you for letting me delay your meeting.
Well, thank you for your.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it feels like water. That was my goal, right?
You did. It's very cool.
Thanks.
We'll be in touch.
Yeah.
Any other old business? Any other new business? Public comment. Our next meeting is December 12th. 7 p.m. Is that back to a Tuesday? Back to a Tuesday.
And maybe in a training course.
Well, next meeting. I'll compare the budget. Well, we should take motion on the 4,000. I hear motion the second, Eric, yep, and Mr. All those in favor? Aye.
So if you could give that, written motion, written, statement or Morgan, we can put it on the agenda.
Yep.
If not, this meeting coming up Monday, but at least for the budget discussion, because we have one more budget. We can put that in, but we need, the board, so what do you spend this money on for?
And then do we want to do another motion for recommending to the select board a the layout on
Oh, Nom's Budman,
On
a water person.
non-husband? Oh, but.
Oh, him?
Oh, On.
Go through.
I was in the Coast Guard. Yeah, 8 years now. Amazing experience. But
Oh, what was the?
never.
Sorry, and what was the name of that other foundation you mentioned that you said? Towards the end, you were talking about another place that could get money, it's like some healthcare foundation.
Oh, James Hope.
Yeah, what-
You never heard of that?
No. Spell it?
AMES.
Yeah.
And Ames
Yeah.
Hope, H-O-L-P.
Okay, and that's the name of a program?
That's the foundation.
The foundation.
Maybe you can explain it better like that to.
The Ames really was from the Ames hardware. Two old ladies who were sisters. And lived in Grafton, Mr.
Uh-huh.
Decided that as their legacy, they set up a foundation to help Grafton and surrounding towns with health issues.
Oh,
So a major amount of their money went to. They actually funded part of the fire truck. They funded our communications on top of their hills. They funded organizations down in Dallas Falls and people with some issues.
We're just gonna.
Think, pretty sure Kathy, that's all as well. This fits into their kind of scope of helping.
It's health related, sure.
It is a bureaucratic nightmare. But even from personal experience, but this fits their mandate pretty well.
where they operate out of,
It's supposed to be.
where they're,
Boston area.
oh,
Bell Falls.
Is-
I clicked on it.
Does Bill Watson have something to do with? Bill Watson, does he have something to do with,
I got more.
with requesting money for,
And I took-
he mentioned something to me
Pulled the wrong folder.
about asking the money from the Ames phone. I forget.
Select board,
And the fire department provided.
and then rescue.
Or, and I'm pretty sure he mentioned Ames phone.
You're gonna repair.
He's not on the board or anything, is he?
Fire department, yeah.
No, on Ames Bolt.
No, I'm pretty sure he is. We could be, but I don't think he is.
So do we want to? Sort of motion to recommend this. Ombuds to the select board? Or do we just? Ask Kathy to add it to the agenda? How do we do that? Get a motion.
That's the option.
Yeah,
Having it on the select board agenda certainly would be a good thing to have. Formal.
So it's to provide an educational piece to our wastewater system,
right.
educational, what would you call it? Anna?
It would provide a community liaisonship and education for the purpose of supporting the community as we move forward through this process. Right, because it's again, it's not telling people how to vote, it's providing as much information as possible to
Mhm.
prepare people for that decision. And I think it really requires somebody who's a people person. But it also requires somebody who has a little bit of distance, and it sounds like Chris has
Well,
that ability already, he's used that ability.
True. On the other hand. You come at it with a lot of technical expertise that he does not have. I agree with you that it helps to have somebody that's slightly, insulated from the pressures of the community directly.
And he'd be somebody that if he and I work together, there would be things that he would be much better at providing because of his existing relationship. And maybe me, who would have a better ability from purely, a standpoint of functionality or science background or things like that. So, working together is,
That sounds good, we could use part of our budget with this regard to pay Chris a certain amount, of one of the regional commissions. You can do tag team for the
yeah.
presentation.
Well, it's good to have people, back up for each other.
Good cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
But part of my budget explanation, potential, well, we've got education and travel, it's different. Assistance in. Funding a community
Community education.
community education regarding wastewater, something to that effect.
Additional. I would say additional, education. For the wastewater.
Okay, we can work on the wording
Yeah,
and
yeah,
put it in. When, should we try to get it in for Monday or wait till December?
I would include that in your budget thing.
And then include that on the agenda for December?
Yeah.
We'd like to see on the December agenda. Select board approving. Such a,
Expenses for it.
Expensive.
that kind of ties that.
I
With the
just got
budget,
it.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Motion to adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
you.